So as some of you are aware, I am a strong advocate of creating a freer, more equitable and more sustainable world. Now, something I've mentioned in the past as kind of a first step towards that goal is people becoming more self-sufficient, more self-sustaining, and generally just decoupling from the current socio-economic paradigm. That can mean many things for different people. It can mean growing your own food, it can mean making your own stuff, it can be doing things like self-teaching, and all sorts of other things. Now, when it comes to making your own stuff, in the past that was sort of something reserved for DIY people, people in the trade, that sort of thing. But in more modern times, we have new technologies that make stuff like DIY more accessible to the average person. Such technology is that thing behind me, which is a 3D printer. Now, 3D printing has been around for a while now. It was a patented technology in the late 90s, well, late 80s to early 90s, sorry. And it remained like that until around the mid-2000s when we had the RepRap project. Now, the RepRap project was an attempt to create a machine that could effectively replicate itself, and 3D printing was kind of an offshoot of that. Now, modern 3D printers have many different types, but the most common type is something called an FDM printer. Now, an FDM printer is like the one behind me, is a printer that essentially lays down plastic layer by layer until it creates an object. Now, different types of printers will use different materials. Printers like the one behind me will use something called a thermoplastic to create an object. There are other types of printers, such as resin printers, that use a thermoset. Now, the difference between them is essentially that a thermoplastic is a lot like water in that it has a solid state, a liquid state, and it can change between them. And therefore it's handy in that it can be remelted into other objects, which also makes it pretty easy to recycle. Thermosets, when you cure or polymerize a thermoset, essentially the process is irreversible. A chemical reaction happens, and once a thermoset has, well, set, it can't really be reprocessed again, and any sort of recycling methods have to be done, well, recycling would have to be done chemically. But in terms of thermoplastics for filament printers, there are many different types of materials that they use. You can have bioplastics like PLA, which is the most common filament material. You can have ABS, which is what Legos are made out of. And you can even have stuff like nylon and polycarbonate and other engineering grade thermoplastics. Now, that's a lot of technical details. But in this video, I wanted to explain why I think that 3D printing can be really powerful in, well, empowering people and giving them people the ability to make a lot more of their stuff, and thus being less reliant on traditional, more commercial routes of attaining something. Now, the first reason as to why 3D printing is such a revolutionary technology is that it gives people almost complete geometrical freedom in terms of what they want to create, controlling for, obviously, software and material choice. And that can open up so many possibilities in terms of freedom of design and creating objects that perhaps could not be created through more traditional means. But that's just half the picture. Not only does 3D printing give average people the ability to create nearly any objects they want, it also does so in such a small package size that people can fit, well, they can fit multiple 3D printers even in a small home. And that has the potential to spark a significant change in the way we think about acquiring goods that we use in our daily lives. Instead of being consumers and ordering something from Amazon or eBay or wherever else and waiting for multiple days for it to come, people can become prosumers and create their own products and share their ideas with other people in a distributed manner. And this has the potential to spark a distributed manufacturing revolution, essentially. And it's already begun. There are multiple online resources and online channels on YouTube that are dedicated to 3D printing and similar manufacturing techniques. And it's just something that's blown up over the past few years or so. As wonderful as 3D printing as a technology is, it's most powerful when used as a starting point for other processes. So say you have a 3D printed part and you want to recreate it in metal. You can print off the part and then you can use a process called lost PLA. I suppose you could use different materials as well, but generally what the 3D printing refers to it as is lost PLA casting. And you can essentially recreate through casting your 3D print in metal. There are so many other ways of post-processing your 3D prints. So say if you print in ABS, the Lego plastic, you can effectively smooth it by using a solvent. And you can make it look like an injection molded part. Now, some people may have heard of 3D printing, and they might just brush it off as something that's just used for creating little fun trinkets and things of that nature. But you can print some pretty functional stuff, and that is why a lot of engineers and people in the tech industry are considering 3D printing as a means of prototyping for their designs. Now, there are other benefits to more people getting involved in 3D printing and making their own stuff using the technology. And one of those benefits is environmental impact and sustainability more generally. Think about it this way. When you buy something that's made out of plastic from an online retailer and you get it delivered to you, that is being delivered to you in a vehicle that is likely petroleum powered. And as the good is being distributed to you, it's creating lots of greenhouse gas emissions. A 3D printer cuts out the middleman. Instead of having a gas-guzzling vehicle deliver an item from miles and miles away to your home or destination or wherever, a 3D printer just lays down plastic and creates an object without emitting the greenhouse gas emissions that the alternative would. Another way in which 3D printing is a sustainable technology is that generally 3D printed objects don't use as much material, and it's because of the way the technology works. In injection molding, which is the traditional way of creating plastic objects, the objects in general are solid. Plastic is injected into a mold and you get a solid object, unless you're talking about blow molding for hollow objects. Anyway, the point is that injection molding uses a lot of material, and it can because it creates objects in a short amount of time. If you were to 3D print an object, a solid object, and you were to keep on 3D printing objects as complete solids, it would A, take you a lot of time, and B, you would use a lot more material than necessary. 3D printing uses a technique called infill to build up the insides of an object that you typically don't see. And the infill gives the print strength, it gives the print rigidity, and it makes it so that you can create a like-for-like object that doesn't, well, like-for-like in comparison to an injection molded object that uses a lot less material. And the consequence of using infill as opposed to creating solid objects is that it saves a lot of time, which is necessary for 3D printing to be a viable process. Now, of course, if you 3D print a lot, you're going to be generating a lot of waste, and I'm going to be covering in the future, well, I hope to cover ways of, at least on the filament side of things, dealing with that. But in this video, I just wanted to talk about 3D printing as a technology, and why I think that average people, makers, and fellow RBE advocates should care about the technology, or at least give it a glance. Anyway, I hope that this video has been informative, and as always, stay safe everyone, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye for now.